So this song is called Understand Life, and kind of from the theme of what I've learned since leaving Jehovah's Witnesses. So the first line is, "It's hard to understand life if I can't remember how I got here." And that's an interesting line from someone who's been born into a cult, because it's a very small world, isn't it, that we lived in as Jehovah's Witnesses. The cult leaders try to keep it that way, especially for those that are born in. They make the outside world a very scary place, full of sin and destruction, and something that will just lead to our life collapsing if we ever get kicked out. So I was that witness that had read the Proclaimer's book several times. So I felt I was quite well grounded, and of course I'd fallen for that line in the Proclaimer's book that talks about Jehovah's Witnesses being a continuous line from Abel right through human history, like all the true worshippers. So I obviously didn't think of it as starting with Russell, but going all the way back. But I suppose there's always that lingering doubt that you kind of feel like, why me? Why was I so lucky to be born into God's one true religion? And it seems that so many never get a real chance to look at our beliefs seriously due to the ineffectiveness of the witnessing efforts. In our area, it was rare to even get into a conversation. So that was my limited cult identity and understanding of life. But what about now? Well, I think we were literally being dumbed down in so many areas and having major prejudices instilled. Coming from a cult that excludes people who disagree, I feel it's especially important for me to try and develop skills of understanding and inclusion for all. I'm a Christian, that's my worldview, and I think if you boil down most Christian denominations to the core beliefs, yes, they do come at the Bible from different directions, with different historical and cultural reasons for why they believe and also emphasize certain doctrines. But when you hear the apologists from both sides of issues, there's nearly always a strong case for both points of view. The evidence and our current level of knowledge may lead us to side with one, but we often walk away with a new respect for the opposing viewpoint. So, like most of us, after reading the Exjw classics, I started reading books to try and broaden my understanding and hear different points of view. One that I found helpful was Kingdom of the Cults, which is by Walter Martin. It's from a Christian perspective on groups that have broken away from traditional Christian doctrines, and they all used redefinition of Christian terms to keep their followers away from the more orthodox teachings. Usually the Trinity was the first to be attacked. So I highly recommend the first chapters of that book, and of course the Jehovah's Witness section. Also, through my research, I came to the belief that there was something special about the King James Bible, more than just the best translation, but the providentially preserved words for our days, which had always been preserved in various forms and languages, but had eventually been collected into one book that could serve as a final word of authority. So this is a rejection of the 1881 Greek critical text of Westcott and Hort, and like the later critical editions that have followed their textual theories. It's not so much an issue of King James only. I just think it's that the King James is the best of the pre-Westcott Hort preserved Bibles. Like you've got, of course, some of them are like Tyndale, Geneva, and the Latin Vulgate. So all of these are valuable for comparison, and it's interesting that nearly all of these older Bibles include 1 John 5:7, the Johannine comma, the most powerful Trinitarian proof text, the one verse that destroys all the anti-Trinitarian cults. So it's no wonder that it is hated by so many, But if you believe God can preserve his word, I think the internal evidence alone is quite convincing. But when you look at all the evidence viewed through believing eyes, I think it's conclusive that it's genuine. So if you're interested in researching about the King James Bible, I'd highly recommend In Awe of Thy Word by Gail Riplinger, and also The Scholarship Only Controversy by Peter Ruckman. I don't agree with either of them on some issues and prejudices they held, but the questions that they raise are quite important for approaching this debate. And of course, read the King James Bible for yourself before you come to any conclusion on that particular debate. So I also listened to a lot of King James sermons on sermonaudio.com, which was quite an important growth stage for me in sort of developing a belief that sort of verged away from our Jehovah's Witness background and helped me to see the wider Christian viewpoints. I also listened to different debates on subjects, which is also good to hear both sides. I know we tend to be quite biased towards our particular position, but it's still useful to hear that there's an argument for both beliefs. I liked the sermons of Greg Banson as well, who sort of blended philosophy with Christian apologetics, which was very interesting to sort of become a little bit better acquainted with that. So it's so easy to just go into our default JW reflex of excluding others who differ with us. But I found that we often learn the most from those we disagree with. And any disagreement is a learning opportunity, even if only that we then understand our opponent a little better. So I found also reading the Bible without the Jehovah's Witness lenses on was very helpful. When I came to the King James belief, I went through a very intensive period of reading 10 chapters a day. It was like one chapter from different categories, so a lot of jumping around, but it was quite an interesting way of covering the Bible quite quickly. I've reduced down to 4 chapters now, and I include the Apocrypha or the Deuterocanon. I take the Anglican view on that whether or not it has as much weight for doctrine, it is an incredibly valuable and at the least the best form of ancient wisdom and liturgical literature outside of the scriptures. So it's useful for growing as a Christian and increasing our godly fear. So I particularly recommend like the 4 books of the Maccabees, Sirach and Wisdom of Solomon. I know the 3rd and 4th Maccabees is more from the Orthodox canon, but I thought they were very good as well. So how do I understand the world of today? Well, this is obviously just my opinion, so I recommend you look into any questions that you have and research them. But I think we live in a world of competing narratives, ideologies and wars of different kinds. I mean, as Jehovah's Witnesses, we thought of it as a spiritual war, and yet I think we were blinded to the true scope and who the friends and enemies really were. I mean, there's always propaganda on both sides of a narrative, so the information war is a real battle for our minds. We might consider certain propagators of enemy propaganda as committing crimes against humanity or hate crimes, as during the Nazi period, but we should remember that the trials that decided the facts of that didn't occur until after the war had been fought and there was a restoration of natural law that could again prevail. So at that point things start to open up for real discussion and a hearing of both sides of important issues. So finally the tyrannies of so-called experts can be broken up and we can start to question those experts from both sides of the issue. I recommend, I quite like the ancient play by Sophocles, Antigone. There's quite a good BBC production of that as well. Sort of looking at this drama of state versus natural law or the conscience, if you like, which is quite interesting from a Jehovah's Witness point of view. Obviously, you've got crisis of conscience, haven't you? So where am I going now? Well, after I came to an orthodox understanding of the fundamentals of Christianity, I started researching the major branches, so like the Roman Catholics, the Orthodox, and I finally settled on the Anglican Church. I became quite a big fan of the 1662 prayer book, which gave me the confidence to finally step through the doors of my local church, and which I've attended regularly and really enjoy the services, to be honest. I plan to get baptised and confirmed later this year. So I found it's been a great way also of being part of the whole town and sort of like opening your eyes to what's going on in the community. I'm also starting an open university module this year as a way to keep moving forward and try and think a little further ahead to fight that doomsday cult mentality. So obviously I want to keep resisting propaganda by being aware of its prevalence, continue to ask the critical thinking questions before getting sucked into a certain narrative. So I think we don't need to be experts. We just need to know enough to be able to ask the right questions, to listen to the right debates and avoid the tyranny of the expert. We can all have an educated opinion. We can think critically and also entertain the uncomfortable questions. And as the closing words of this song says, step away and heal from any damaging cult-like mentality. So I hope you enjoy the song.